Commander Jack Fletcher was having a terrible day even before the universe decided to promote him. You want me to what? Jack stared at the holographic summons flickering above his desk, coffee dribbling down his chin. Commander Fletcher. The message repeated in that annoyingly formal AI voice. Your presence is required at the 427th Galactic Dominion Conference. Shuttle departing. 37 minutes. There's been a mistake, Jack muttered, frantically calling the administrative office. I'm not a diplomat. I fill out requisition forms for deep space buoys, for crying out loud. The harried office AI, which Jack had nicknamed Blinky due to its tendency to flicker during budget discussions, simply repeated, credentials confirmed, diplomatic package uploaded. When Jack arrived at the spaceport, he found a small, rumpled man waiting beside the gleaming diplomatic shuttle. The man's badge read Dr. Maxwell Reed, Anthropological Advisor. You're not Ambassador Chen, the man said, frowning. Brilliant observation. I'm Commander Fletcher. There's been a mistake. But Ambassador Chen was specifically selected. Look, Jack interrupted, showing him the credentials. The system thinks I'm going, and the shuttle leaves in 15 minutes. Do you want to explain to the Galactic Dominion why Earth stood them up? Dr. Reed paled. That would be unfortunate. Unfortunate like that time we accidentally translated greetings as your offspring smelled delicious to the Vorgans. Worse. Jack sighed. Fine. I'll go, say hello, apologize for the mix-up and leave. How hard can interstellar diplomacy be? We do, they say, this. Ray Jabin said. Easy entities that can't win. Alone aboard the shuttle. Jack skimmed the briefing materials. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 3 years ago, and this was their first major conference. The material mentioned something about territorial designations and species classifications that made his eyes glaze over. When the shuttle docked at the enormous space station known as the Hub, Jack's jaw dropped. Thousands of alien species crowded the concourses, some floating, some slithering, some doing things that defied description. Commander Fletcher? A small green humanoid with too many eyes approached. I am Protocol Officer Zim. There is confusion regarding your credentials. I know. There's been a mix-up. Indeed. You were listed as a Level 3 representative, but your genetic scan indicates you're actually human. Humans are a Level 9 species. Very prestigious. Very rare. Level 9? But we just joined. The system doesn't lie, Zim insisted, updating Jack's credentials. Level 9. Most honored. Suite upgraded. Speaking slot added. Voting rights confirmed. As Zim scurried away, Jack turned to Dr. Reed. What just happened? Reed looked stunned. I think they just gave humanity a major promotion because of a clerical error. Should we correct them? A passing alien with tentacles for a face overheard and gasped. The Level 9 human would consider deceiving the Council? How gloriously unpredictable. Exactly as the legends foretold. Jack forced a smile. Just testing your listening devices. Very good. Gold star for you. As the alien hurried away, presumably to gossip, Jack whispered to Reed, I think we're in trouble. Actually, Reed replied thoughtfully, I think we might be in the perfect position to avoid becoming a galactic footnote. Let's see where this goes. That, Jack said, grabbing 2 flutes of bubbling liquid from a passing server drone, is either the smartest or stupidest thing I've ever heard. He downed the drink in one gulp, then immediately regretted it as his sinuses began to glow. The main conference chamber resembled a cosmic amphitheater designed by an architect with too many appendages and not enough restraint. Floating platforms, anti-gravity seats, and bubbling tanks accommodated species from across the galaxy. Jack was escorted to a surprisingly prominent position near the central speaking podium. Is that Jello? Jack whispered, gesturing to a wobbling mass of transparent green goo with floating organs. That's Ambassador Crace of the Plubian Collective, Reed hissed. They're basically sentient digestive systems. Don't mention food. Got it. What about Tentacle Face from earlier? A Maraxian information broker. 8 brains, no concept of privacy, and unfortunately, an excellent memory. Jack grimaced. Well, that's just perfect. A hush fell over the assembly as a bluish, squid-like creature glided to the center podium, its 12 tentacles manipulating controls with ostentatious precision. "That's Ambassador Glix," Reed explained, senior representative of the Cephalian Empire. "They believe they're the most evolved species in the galaxy." "Let me guess," Jack muttered. "Not fans of mammals? They consider us mobile bacteria colonies with delusions of grandeur." Glix's voice resonated through the chamber, auto-translating into Jack's earpiece. "Esteemed colleagues, we convene the 427th Dominion Conference with much to discuss. Most pressingly, the designation and classification of territories in Sector 8, including the newly discovered developing realm of humanity." Jack's earpiece crackled as a private communication came through. "He's planning to classify your planet as a preservation zone. Basically a zoo." Startled, Jack looked around and spotted a slender, purple-skinned humanoid with 4 arms operating a console nearby. She winked one of her 3 eyes at him. "Who are you?" Jack subvocalized, activating the private channel. "Zora, Administrative Assistant Level 12. I process the paperwork everyone ignores. And why are you telling me this?" "Because watching Glix's tentacles knot themselves when things don't go his way is literally the only entertainment in this job." Meanwhile, Glix continued, "As is tradition, we will begin with species introductions. I note with interest we have a human representative granted level 9 status. The most unusual." All eyes, stalks, and sensory appendages turned toward Jack, who rose with a confidence he absolutely did not feel. "Thank you, Ambassador Glix." "Glixix," the cephalopod corrected, color rippling angrily across his mantle. "Right. Glix. Hard to pronounce with mammalian vocal cords, you understand." Jack smiled broadly. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, let me say how delighted we are to be here, fully prepared to take our rightful place in galactic society." Glix's tentacles twisted. "Perhaps the human is unaware that this conference is primarily to determine if your species qualifies for full recognition." "Oh, my understanding was that our level 9 status had already settled that question." Jack maintained his smile while frantically signaling Reed for help. Reed subtly shook his head and mouthed, "No idea." Zora's voice whispered in Jack's ear, "Level 9 is typically reserved for species with at least 3 planetary colonies or 1,000-year membership. Someone really messed up your paperwork." Glix's color darkened to an ominous navy blue. "Perhaps we should review the humans' qualifications. Tell us, Commander Fletcher, what contributions has humanity made to galactic society?" "Well," Jack improvised, "we've shared our extensive music library." "Ah, yes," Glix sneered, "repetitive sound patterns, groundbreaking. Our culinary traditions? You cook your food. How primitive." Jack was running out of options when Zora's voice came through again. "Make something up. But bureaucracy thrives on confusion." Taking a deep breath, Jack declared, "We've also pioneered revolutionary waste management techniques." The chamber went silent. "Waste management?" Glix asked hesitantly. "Oh yes," Jack continued, gaining confidence. "Humans have developed a system so efficient that 90% of our bureaucratic waste is recycled directly into entertainment programming." A murmur ran through the assembly. Even Glix seemed momentarily at a loss. "He's referring to reality television," Reed whispered to a fascinated reptilian delegate beside him. "Humans watching other humans complete arbitrary tasks. Very popular. Fascinating." The reptilian responded, "Such mental efficiency." Glix's tentacles twisted in what Jack was beginning to recognize as frustration. "This is irrelevant. The issue before us is clear. Earth territory must be properly classified, and I propose designation as a Class C preservation zone." "A zoo," Jack translated loudly. "Ambassador Glix wants to turn Earth into a cosmic petting zoo." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Glix's color pulsed with rage. "I suggest," Glix said icily, "that the human representatives study our protocols before making such inflammatory statements." Actually, Zora interrupted, standing from her console. "According to Statute 7.3.46-B, any species can challenge their classification through the contest of species merit." Jack had no idea what that meant, but the way Glix's tentacles froze told him it was significant. "The contest hasn't been invoked in millennia," Glix protested. But it remains valid protocol, Zora replied calmly. All eyes turned back to Jack, who squared his shoulders and said the words that would either save humanity or doom it entirely. Then I officially invoke the contest of species merit. Unless, of course, Ambassador Glix believes his species might lose to a bunch of mobile bacteria. The assembly erupted into chaos as Glix's skin flashed through a rainbow of outraged colors. What exactly is the contest of species merit? Jack whispered frantically to Reed as they were escorted to their quarters to prepare. I have absolutely no idea, Reed admitted. It wasn't in any of the briefing materials. You're supposed to be the expert. I'm an anthropologist specializing in human alien cultural translation, not an expert on obscure galactic protocols. Their quarters were luxurious by human standards, a suite with gravity controls, atmospheric customization, and what appeared to be a food synthesizer that kept producing blue cubes regardless of what buttons they pressed. Zora arrived moments later, all 4 arms carrying stacks of translucent tablets. You really did it now, she said. But her tone suggested admiration rather than criticism. What exactly did I do? Jack asked. The contest of species merit is an ancient protocol from when the Dominion was first forming. It's meant to allow newer species to prove their worth. She set down the tablets. It consists of 3 challenges: knowledge demonstration, cultural exhibition, and physical challenge. Jack groaned. So I just committed humanity to an intergalactic talent show against one of the oldest, most politically powerful species in the galaxy, Zora confirmed cheerfully. The Cephalians have been pulling strings for millennia. Why are you helping us? Reed asked suspiciously. Zora's third eye blinked. Glixex rejected my promotion 7 times because my species is insufficiently evolved for administrative advancement. Also, I've been processing preservation zone paperwork for 23 cycles, and it's boring. Before they could discuss further, the door chimed. Outside stood a delegation of officials, led by a floating crystalline entity that introduced itself as Arbitrator Prism. We must confirm the human challenger's identity and position, it chimed. I'm Commander Jack Fletcher. Earth Space Command, Jack said firmly. And your diplomatic rank? Jack hesitated. Level 9, the crystalline being vibrated in acknowledgement, verified. And your second? Jack glanced at Reed, who shrugged helplessly. Dr. Maxwell Reed, my cultural advisor. Very well. The challenges begin in 2 hours. The first test knowledge demonstration will assess your species' understanding of galactic principles. After the officials departed, Jack paced anxiously. We're doomed. I don't know the first thing about galactic principles. I can barely remember Earth's solar system. Perhaps I could compete instead. Reed suggested. I've at least studied xenopolitics. No substitutions allowed, Zora said, scanning the regulations. The challenger must complete all 3 tasks. Great, so I've doomed humanity because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Not necessarily, Zora replied, manipulating one of her tablets. The rules are flexible. Knowledge can be interpreted broadly. How broadly? Jack asked. Let's just say previous competitors have been creative with their definitions. 2 hours later, Jack stood on a platform in the center of the assembly chamber. Across from him, Glix hovered in a bubble of water, tentacles arranged in what Jack assumed was a smugly confident posture. Arbitrator Prism announced, the knowledge demonstration will proceed in alternating questions. Each competitor will be asked to demonstrate understanding of a fundamental galactic principle. Glix went first, expertly diagramming the quantum relationships between dark matter and conscious evolution. The assembly murmured appreciatively. Dare. When Jack's turn came, Arbitrator Prism asked, please explain the unified theory of interspecies communication as it relates to diplomacy. Jack froze. Reed looked ready to faint. Then Jack remembered Zora's advice about flexible interpretations. The unified theory of interspecies communication, Jack began confidently, is best illustrated through what humans call the Golden Rule paradox. The chamber went silent. Even Glixix seemed curious. On Earth we teach children, treat others as you wish to be treated. However, this breaks down in interspecies contexts. For example, treating a Mesaraxian the way a human wishes to be treated would involve respecting their privacy, which would actually offend them, as they value information sharing above all. The Meraxian delegate bobbed enthusiastically. True interspecies communication requires understanding that different beings have fundamentally different needs and values, Jack continued, entirely making this up. The advanced approach is what humans call the platinum rule. Treat others as they wish to be treated. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. This is absurd, Glix protested. He's not explaining any scientific theory. On the contrary, Jack replied smoothly, I'm explaining something far more fundamental to diplomacy, empathy, which seems to be lacking in certain tentacled delegates' proposals. The audience erupted into various species versions of laughter and approval. Glix's skin darkened furiously. As the knowledge demonstration continued, Jack bluffed his way through questions by reframing them in terms of human concepts, citing everything from Shakespeare to Star Trek as if they were profound philosophical texts. Somehow, by the end, the judges seemed impressed by humanity's unique perspective. The final scores were announced. Glix scored perfectly on technical merit but lost points for narrow interpretation. Jack scored lower on technical accuracy but received bonus points for innovative framework. The result? A tie. As they left the chamber, Reed whispered. That was either brilliant or the greatest con job in human history. I'm going with both, Jack replied, his confident smile fading the moment they were alone. But the next challenge is a cultural exhibition. What the hell are we going to do for that? I have an idea, Reed said, looking surprisingly mischievous for an academic, but you're not going to like it. The cultural exhibition took place in what Jack could only describe as a cosmic theater in the round. Species of all descriptions filled the viewing areas, eager to witness the continuation of the unexpected competition. Glix went first, naturally. His presentation was a masterclass in cephalian cultural superiority, a bioluminescent display synchronized with harmonic vibrations that told the story of his species' evolution, from simple ocean dwellers to masters of science and philosophy. It was, Jack had to admit, impressive. When it ended, the audience's sensory appendages were vibrating with appreciation. Glix's skin rippled with smug satisfaction as he glided past Jack. Try to follow that, mammal. Jack and Reed stood center stage, dressed in their formal Earth uniforms, looking decidedly less exotic than their competitor. Are you sure about this? Jack whispered. Trust me, Reed replied. Aliens love this stuff. Jack turned to address the audience. Esteemed delegates, the human cultural demonstration will showcase an ancient Earth ritual that embodies our species' core values, adaptability, rhythm, and not taking ourselves too seriously. Reed activated a small device, and the opening beats of Macarena filled the chamber. This sacred dance, Jack announced with complete seriousness, has been performed by humans for generations to celebrate unity and coordination. What followed was perhaps the most dignified performance of the Macarena in human history. Jack and Reed moved with synchronization that belied their brief rehearsal, their faces solemn as if performing a religious ceremony. At first the audience seemed confused. Then, gradually various species began to bob, sway, or vibrate in time with the music. By the halfway point, several delegates were attempting to mimic the movements with their various appendages. When they finished, there was a moment of silence before the chamber erupted in appreciative noises. The Meraxian information broker was particularly enthusiastic, its tentacles waving in poor imitation of the dance moves. What is the deeper meaning of this ritual? Asked a crystalline being. Reed stepped forward. The dance represents humanity's belief that even serious matters can be approached with joy. The repetitive movements symbolize how we face life's challenges one step at a time, together, often looking ridiculous but persevering nonetheless. Jack struggled to keep a straight face as Reed continued to spout completely fabricated anthropological analysis. The judges conferred, then announced their verdict, while Glix's presentation demonstrated superior technical achievement and historical significance. The human demonstration scored higher on audience engagement and cultural accessibility. Another tie. Glix's skin had turned an alarming shade of purple. This is outrageous. They performed a simple repetitive movement pattern to primitive sound waves, which apparently resonated with the audience more than your light show, Jack countered. As they prepared for the final challenge, Zora slipped into their preparation room. You're doing amazing. Glix has filed 17 procedural complaints already. What's the final challenge? Jack asked. The physical challenge is always customized to test both competitors fairly, accounting for physiological differences. So what will it be? Zora checked her tablet. It's called Harmonious Conflict Resolution Through Competitive Pattern Recognition. Jack and Reed exchanged baffled looks. It's basically a game combining strategic thinking, physical coordination, and musical interpretation, Zora explained. So, chess meets synchronized swimming meets karaoke? Jack asked incredulously. Exactly. I knew humans were perceptive. The arena for the final challenge resembled a three-dimensional chessboard floating in a zero-gravity chamber. Spectator bubbles surrounded it on all sides. At the center was a holographic pattern generator and what appeared to be sound emission pods. Arbitrator Prism explained the rules. Competitors would alternate making moves on the board while physically navigating the zero-gravity environment. Each move had to correspond to a pattern displayed by the generator, and at specific intervals, competitors had to vocalize a harmonic sequence matching their position. This is impossible, Jack whispered. Glix has 12 tentacles and natural buoyancy. I'll be flopping around like a drunk astronaut. Reed looked equally concerned. Cephalians also have superior pattern recognition capabilities. Zora patted Jack's shoulder with two of her hands. Remember what you said about the platinum rule, different species, different advantages. As the challenge began, Jack's predictions initially proved accurate. Glix moved through the chamber with graceful, undulating motions, his tentacles manipulating multiple game pieces simultaneously. Jack, meanwhile, struggled just to stay oriented in zero gravity. But as the game progressed, Jack began to notice something. While Glix was physically superior, he approached the game with rigid predictability, always making the optimal move according to traditional strategy. He's not adapting, Jack realized. He's playing by the book. During his next turn, instead of following the expected pattern, Jack deliberately made a suboptimal move that positioned him for a more advantageous sequence 3 turns ahead. Glix, following conventional strategy, fell into the trap. When the musical component began, Glix produced mathematically perfect harmonies. Jack, unable to match this precision, instead improvised a jazz-like interpretation that technically satisfied the rules while completely changing the game's rhythm. The audience was clearly entertained by this contrast in Styles Glix's technical perfection versus Jack's creative adaptation. As they entered the final sequence, Glix's frustration became evident. His movements grew less fluid, his harmonics slightly off-key. Jack, meanwhile, had found his stride, compensating for his physical limitations with unpredictable strategy. The final score flashed across the holographic displays, a statistical tie in technical execution, but with Jack scoring higher in creative interpretation and adaptive response. The human had won by a single point. The chamber erupted in various species expressions of surprise and excitement. Even the judges seemed stunned by the outcome. Glix's skin turned a dark, dangerous shade. This is unacceptable. The human clearly violated standard gaming protocols. Actually, Arbitrator Prism chimed. The rules specify achievement of harmonic patterns, not the method of achieving them. He changed the parameters of the challenge, Glix insisted, tentacles writhing. I adapted, Jack corrected. Apparently a concept your species struggles with, despite all those appendages. Glix's mantle pulsed ominously. This contest is a sham. I demand review of the human's eligibility. Zora stepped forward, tablet in hand. Interesting you should mention eligibility, Ambassador. I've been reviewing the classification procedures, and it seems there are significant irregularities in your preliminary assessment of Earth. What irregularities? Jack asked. According to standard protocols, any inhabited planet with unique biological diversity should automatically be classified as a protected development zone, not a preservation zone. The difference being that the former allows self-governance while the latter permits external management. The assembly murmured as implications spread. Furthermore, Zora continued, Ambassador Glix bypassed 3 mandatory assessment phases in his recommendation. All eyes turned to Glix, whose color was now fluctuating wildly. This bureaucratic minutiae is irrelevant, he sputtered. The human species is clearly too unpredictable and chaotic to be trusted with full galactic membership. Actually, Jack said, stepping forward, I think that's precisely why we deserve membership. The assembly chamber had transformed from a formal diplomatic venue into something resembling a cosmic courtroom, with Jack and Glix positioned at opposing podiums, while delegates from hundreds of species watched with whatever passed for attention among their kind. Arbitrator Prism hovered at the center. Due to the unprecedented outcome of the contest and subsequent allegations, this council will now hear final arguments regarding humanity's classification. Glix spoke first, his voice resonating with practiced authority. Esteemed colleagues, let us not be swayed by novelty. Yes, this human showed unexpected aptitude in our challenges. But consider what that truly reveals: unpredictability, disregard for established protocols, and a concerning level of adaptability that borders on chaos. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The human representative himself admitted their species recycles bureaucratic waste into entertainment. They transform rules into amusement. Glix's tentacles gesticulated dramatically. Is this the behavior of a species ready for galactic responsibility? Jack had to admit it was a compelling argument, especially since he'd made up that nonsense about reality TV. Furthermore, Glix continued, my initial assessment of Earth was not procedurally flawed, but expedited due to clear evidence. Humans have damaged their own ecosystem, engage in constant internal conflicts, and their information networks are primarily used to share images of juvenile felines and argue with strangers. Uncomfortable shifting came from many delegates. Jack couldn't exactly deny these points. I propose not only that Earth be classified as a preservation zone, but that human expansion be restricted until they demonstrate greater stability. For their own protection, of course. Glix's final words dripped with condescension as he returned to his hovering water bubble. Jack approached the podium, mind racing. He glanced at Reed, who gave an encouraging nod, and Zora, who discreetly flashed a document on her tablet, the actual regulations regarding species classification. Delegates of the Galactic Dominion, Jack began. Ambassador Glix has painted a compelling picture of humanity, incomplete, but not entirely inaccurate. Yes, we're messy. Yes, we're unpredictable. Yes, we spend too much time arguing about trivial matters while ignoring important ones. The chamber grew quiet, aliens clearly surprised by this admission. But consider this, every species in this assembly evolved to survive in specific conditions. The Cephalians developed intelligence in stable oceanic environments with abundant resources. Jack gestured toward Glix. Their adaptations favor precision, long-term planning, and hierarchical thinking, excellent qualities for building a bureaucracy. Glix's mantle darkened, but he remained silent. Humans, by contrast, evolved in wildly variable environments facing constant threats and changes. We're not good at following rules because our survival often depended on breaking them and finding new solutions. Jack paused, making eye contact with several delegates. Ambassador Glix sees our unpredictability as a liability. I suggest it's our greatest asset, not just to ourselves, but to this dominion. When systems become too rigid, too predictable, they grow vulnerable. The universe doesn't care about our rules and protocols. It throws asteroids and supernovas and quantum fluctuations at us without warning. Several delegates bobbed or pulsed in what Jack hoped was agreement. Humanity doesn't offer perfect order. We offer innovation born from chaos. We offer perspectives that might seem illogical until they save your civilization. We've survived our own worst tendencies because enough of us keep questioning, adapting, and yes, sometimes breaking the rules that no longer serve us. Jack noticed Zora subtly pointing to her tablet, where a timer was counting down. He needed to wrap this up. I'm not asking you to make us leaders of the Dominion. I'm asking you to let us contribute in the way we do best, by being the species that asks why not, when everyone else asks why. By being the ones who try the ridiculous solution that just might work when conventional wisdom fails. The chamber had grown completely silent. You don't need to trust us with everything, but I think you need us for something, and classifying Earth as a zoo won't let you find out what that is. As Jack finished, the chamber remained quiet for several seconds before erupting in a cacophony of alien discussion. Arbitrator Prism called for order, then announced, the Council will deliberate on this matter. All parties will be notified when a decision is reached. Jack returned to where Reed and Zora waited. That was surprisingly eloquent, Reed admitted. Don't sound so shocked, Jack replied. I occasionally paid attention in diplomacy seminars. It won't matter, Zora warned. Glix has too many political allies. Then why help us at all? Jack asked. Zora's third eye blinked slowly. Because bureaucracy needs shaking up every few millennia. Also, you're entertaining. Before they could discuss further, a commotion erupted near Glix's delegation. One of his assistants was being restrained while waving a data crystal and shouting something about manipulated classifications. Arbitrator Prism glided over, examining the crystal. After a moment of consultation with other officials, the crystalline being vibrated in what appeared to be alarm. Ambassador Glix, Prism chimed loudly. You are requested to explain these classification documents, which appear to have been altered to support your position. All three of Glix's hearts became visible as his skin turned transparent with shock. This is a misunderstanding. That data crystal is clearly corrupted. It contains original assessment reports, Prism continued, indicating Earth met 7 of 9 criteria for developing world status, not the 2 you reported to the Council. The chamber erupted again. Jack looked at Zora, who was studiously avoiding eye contact. Did you? He whispered. I simply ensured all relevant documentation was available to the Council, she replied innocently. It's not my fault if certain appendages were careless with their access codes. After another hour of chaotic deliberation, during which Glix demanded multiple procedural reviews and was ultimately escorted from the chamber when his chromatophores began displaying what the translator delicately called diplomatic obscenities, Arbitrator Prism called the assembly to order. This council has reached a decision regarding Earth's classification, the crystalline being announced. Based on contest results, regulatory review, and unexpected evidence, humanity is granted developing species status with provisional membership in the Galactic Dominion. Jack couldn't believe what he was hearing. Furthermore, Prism continued, given the unique circumstances of this case and the demonstrated, unconventional diplomatic aptitude of Commander Fletcher, this council recognizes him as Earth's official representative with Level 9 clearance confirmed. Wait, what? Jack sputtered. But I'm not. Reed elbowed him sharply in the ribs. The human accepts with gratitude, Reed announced quickly, and looks forward to facilitating productive relations between Earth and the Dominion. As delegates began to disperse, Jack turned to Reed in panic. I can't be Earth's ambassador. I'm not qualified. This was supposed to be temporary. Congratulations on your promotion, Zora said cheerfully. The paperwork will be processed within 3 to 5 business cycles. 3 months later, Jack sat in his new office in the recently established Earth Embassy on the hub, staring out at the streams of interstellar traffic. The room was decorated with a bizarre mixture of formal diplomatic furnishings and souvenirs from various alien delegations who had visited Earth since its reclassification. His favorite was a crystalline sculpture from the Emaraxian delegation that somehow performed the Macarena when exposed to certain frequencies of light. Ambassador Fletcher, his assistant, called over the intercom. Your 1,400 appointment is here. Jack sighed. He still wasn't used to the title. Send them in. Dr. Maxwell Reed entered, carrying a stack of tablets. In the month since the conference, Reed had been officially designated as Earth's Cultural Translation Officer, which primarily involved explaining away Jack's diplomatic faux pas and converting alien concepts into human terms. How was the Hive Mind Collective? Jack asked, fascinating. They communicate entirely through pheromone consensus. Reed set down the tablets. Though they were confused by our concept of individual opinion. Did you explain? I told them it was like having billions of hive minds that rarely agree with each other. They found it horrifying but were too polite to say so. Jack laughed. That's humanity in a nutshell. The door chimed again, and Zora entered. After the conference, she had requested and received a transfer to Earth's embassy as interspecies administrative liaison. In reality, she spent most of her time teaching Jack and Reed how to navigate galactic bureaucracy without causing diplomatic incidents. The Cephalian delegation sent another formal protest, she announced, all 4 arms carrying different documents. Something about cultural appropriation, because humans are selling plush toys of Glix doing the Macarena. Add it to the pile, Jack sighed, gesturing to a hovering container labeled diplomatic incidents, low priority. Also, The Galactic Council is impressed with humanity's proposal for streamlining the petition process. They're implementing it next cycle. Reed looked surprised. They're adopting our suggestion. The one based on Earth's online comment systems. Apparently allowing citizens to upvote political proposals is revolutionary in bureaucratic terms, Zora explained. Who knew democracy could be so disruptive? Jack smiled. In the months since Earth's reclassification, humanity had been making waves throughout the Dominion, sometimes causing headaches, but more often bringing fresh perspectives to entrenched systems. Earth tourism had skyrocketed, with aliens fascinated by human culture, particularly their music, cooking shows, and a peculiar habit of keeping animals as companions rather than food or tools. By the way, Zora added, checking another document, Earth has been formally invited to the Galactic Innovation Summit. Apparently, word of your creative problem-solving has spread, meaning our tendency to ignore rules and improvise wildly. Precisely. The Dominion is calling it the human approach. It's quite trendy. Jack shook his head in amazement. And to think this all started with a clerical error. About that, Zora said, her third eye blinking rapidly. Something Jack had learned indicated amusement. I've been meaning to tell you, it wasn't exactly an error. Jack and Reed stared at her. What do you mean? Jack demanded. Well, when Ambassador Chen fell ill, the system needed a replacement. I might have suggested your name and possibly adjusted your credentials a tiny bit. You what? Jack exclaimed. Why would you do that? Zora shrugged all four shoulders. Bureaucracy had grown stagnant. Reports indicated humans were adaptable and unpredictable. The system needed disruption. So you picked me at random to cause chaos. Jack couldn't believe what he was hearing. At random. Your personnel file showed a consistent pattern of creative problem-solving, unorthodox thinking, and remarkably good outcomes despite procedural violations. Zora's eyes twinkled. Perfect qualities for shaking up a 12,000-year-old bureaucracy. Jack stared at her, torn between outrage and amusement. So I'd been manipulated by aliens from the beginning. I prefer the term strategically positioned for success, Zora replied. Reed had been suspiciously quiet. Jack turned to him. Did you know about this? Not initially, Reed admitted. But Ambassador Chen's illness was remarkably convenient, and your credentials should have been flagged immediately. I started piecing it together during the cultural exhibition. And you didn't tell me? Would it have made a difference? Reed asked. You were doing well without knowing. Jack leaned back in his chair, processing this revelation. So this whole time, my diplomatic career has been an elaborate cosmic prank. Not a prank, Zora corrected. An experiment, and a successful one. Earth has provisional membership, humans are being taken seriously, and even Ambassador Glixix has grudgingly acknowledged that your species has potential. Speaking of Glix, Reed interjected, the latest intelligence suggests he's been reassigned to oversee cultural relations with a pre-technological species in the Outer Rim. Let me guess, Jack said. A water world, desert planet. Zora replied with a satisfied smile. Apparently, the Cephalian High Command felt he needed to develop greater adaptability. The three of them shared a laugh, interrupted by a notification on Jack's console. It was a message from Earth Command confirming his permanent appointment as ambassador, with a personal note from his former supervisor. No idea how you pulled this off, Fletcher, but try not to start an interstellar war. As Zora and Reed discussed the upcoming Innovation Summit, Jack gazed out at the bustling hub. Thousands of species going about their business, and somehow humanity had muscled its way into this cosmic community through a combination of clerical manipulation, improvised dancing, and sheer audacity. It wasn't diplomacy as he'd been taught it. It probably wasn't even good diplomacy by conventional standards. But it was distinctly human diplomacy, chaotic, adaptable, and surprisingly effective. You know, Jack said, interrupting his colleague's conversation, there's an old Earth saying, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Is that your species' official diplomatic doctrine? Zora asked. Asked, might as well be. Jack replied with a grin. Should we make it our embassy motto? Reed groaned. Please don't. The translation alone would cause 17 diplomatic incidents. Too late, Jack said. pointing to a newly installed plaque beside the door, where Earth's embassy motto now displayed in 27 languages: humanity, dangerously unpredictable, extremely entertaining. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the Galactic Dominion, a new classification had been quietly added to the official species registry: humans, approach with caution and a sense of humor.